This is the atrocity of a shelf that I've outgrown and decided to build a dedicated shelf for all of my wood glue. This is what kicked off this entire project idea. Follow along to see what I do. The keen observer will notice that there are two different colored plywoods you'll see here in the next couple minutes. That is because I'm actually building two different shelves in two different sizes. The larger one I'll keep in my shop to store all of my Titebond products. The smaller one's actually going to a friend of mine to use. But I wanted to build both to prove the plans that I made, which both will be available at the links below if you're interested in building either of these two size shelves, and you'll get to see both at the end. But for the most part, you'll see me actually building the larger of the two shelves. While the dimensions of each shelf are specific to the various bottle sizes that Titebond sells, I did plan both to be a very specific size because the larger set of shelves comes out of one half of a sheet of plywood, so a 4x4 sheet of plywood, and the smaller shelf can be built out of a 4x2 sheet, so a quarter sheet of plywood, just to make it easier with actually very little waste afterwards. After I cut all my panels down to their correct size and set up my dado stack in my table saw, I use a scrap piece to make sure the depth is set correctly. The depth will, if it's not set correctly, will throw off the final dimensions of the project, and I don't want to do that. So I used a scrap piece to make sure everything was lined just right. Once everything is set up correctly, I cut grooves on both sides and the back panel for the shelves, so that the shelves themselves can slide into the back and sides. After a couple test runs, I felt safe being able to make this cut, even though it's not entirely advisable, and if you're not comfortable with it, I do not recommend you try it. And I also messed up at this point because I did not lower my dado blade back into the table saw, having removed the sled. And I couldn't use the sled for this because the back panel is actually too wide for the sled that I use. And I didn't realize it yet until this point I realized that I went just a bit too deep with that cut. Since I needed to make the same cut, I figured I could just fill it with a scrap piece of plywood because that's what those gaps are for, and then cut it flush and recut it. And if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see that when cutting it at flush again, the hand saw I was using may have slipped and cut my hand a little bit. Not one of my proudest moments, but that video is still over on Instagram if you want to see that. At this point, I drop a pencil down through a paper towel tube to get a rough mark so I know where to cut a hole to slide a dowel through to be able to hold paper towels at the bottom of my shelf. I used a gallon bottle of Titebond 3 to get the radius profile I wanted for both sides of the shelf. The top shelves are going to be not as deep as the bottom two shelves, so I need to take out some material at the top to make everything fit better. This is another table saw operation I do not recommend you trying if you do not feel comfortable doing it. It's called a stop cut. So what I'm doing is running the board halfway through, getting to that point where I'm going to make the curve, and I'm going to stop, hold tightly onto the board, and I'm actually able to hit the stop switch on my table saw with my hip, let the blade come to a complete stop before I move anything. I'm then able to use my jigsaw to cut out the curved portion of the cut. final assembly, I put a good amount of Titebond to extend in all the dados on both sides and the back, and got everything ready to glue together. I used the Titebond to extend because it offers longer open time, and since I had so much glue to spread, I decided it would be better safe than sorry and just leave it in clamps for a little bit longer and have that extra insurance of the open time. After getting the shelf in place, I applied some paste wax to the entire surface. This makes sure that any glue that drips onto it, if there's some running down the side of a bottle that I didn't notice, it won't actually stick to the wood. It should just stick to the wax and be able to peel right off. And once I got all the excess wax wiped off after it had dried, it was time to get everything I had on the shelf and fill it up. Now, full disclosure, while I'm not sponsored by Titebond, when I told them I planned to do this, they were generous enough to send me the bottles that I requested, and I have used everything here and use it regularly. That's why I got the gallons of 2 and 3. That's what I use the most. The only two things here I haven't used before are the Quick Set and the hide glue, which I'm very excited to try out. If you're interested in building either of those two shelves for your shop, I have plans available for both for sale at my website at the link in the description below. I highly encourage it, and if you build them, send me pics. I'll put them on my Instagram and show everyone what you did. Thanks for watching, and please do consider subscribing to my channel. It would really help us grow. And thanks again.